Good morning on this Sunday, August 24th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Vice President J.D. Vance rallies Georgia GOP and praises the big, beautiful bill. Also, a historic Savannah mill is closing its doors, ending nearly 90 years of paper production. And the Fulton County Sheriff slams a newly passed $1.2 billion plan to renovate the jail. Phil and Martha are here to my right, and Theron is joining us from Virginia to my left and virtually. So Melita's off this week. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Vice President J.D. Vance hit Metro Atlanta Thursday with a 1-2 punch, firing up Republican voters and defending President Trump's signature tax and spending law. At stops in Peachtree City and Atlanta, Vance tore into Senator Jon Ossoff for opposing the package Democrats call a big budget betrayal, while Republicans rebranded the working families tax cut. Martha, to you first. Let's start with you. What do you think? Well, how do you think Georgians feel about the so-called big, beautiful bill?
Well, I think they don't know yet, okay? They're glad their taxes aren't going to go up. I mean, I think that that's pretty across the board. Nobody wants to pay $1,700 to $2,300 more a year in income taxes. I think there's a lot of misrepresentation about things. Senator Ossoff has become this progressive warrior on what might happen with this bill, and I didn't see him fight for those kinds of things in the last 4 years, especially as it related to President Biden. So, I think it was a great visit. It was something that a lot of people wanted, and you saw all three of the Senate candidates in the room give a little bit of a speech, and I thought it was a good day.
What do you think there? And I know you're in Virginia, but I'm sure you're monitoring what's happening here in Georgia.
Well, Lori, I'm in the heart of it. Let's just take our viewers here to the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia. Number one, I'm in an area that has been negatively impacted significantly, Lori, by federal employees' jobs being eliminated. We're talking about tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people in this area that have been laid off. Now let's bring it home to Georgia, because this is a Georgia-based political, public affairs talk show. Vice President Vance was in Georgia because he sees the same thing that a lot of us are seeing. I agree with Martha. It is still too yet to determine what will be the final outcome of this bill. But what we do know right now is that Georgians are very uncertain about it. And there was a poll that came out 2 weeks ago. 52% of Georgians do not like the big, beautiful bill. I call it the bad, bizarre bill. Second thing that you're seeing, I know we'll talk about this a little bit later about what's happening in Savannah, but just look at what's happening right now in our rural hospitals. They are on the verge of closing. Nursing homes are suffering. And so I think that J.D. Vance came to Georgia because they see the same polling numbers that we see. And two, yes, they know that Jon Ossoff has taken this mantle up to speak out for Georgians and say, hey, look, this is a very, very bad bill. There's hundreds of thousands of people that are going to lose their health insurance. We're talking about energy jobs going away. And so I was thinking it was more of a defensive move, him coming here, than it was an offensive move.
Phil, do you agree with that? Was it a defensive move?
No, I think it was an offense. And to Martha's point a little earlier, the messaging needs to get out there because the mainstream media doesn't tell you about all of this. The health care cuts that Theron is talking about, and it was very specific, that's going to go against all these illegal immigrants that are on the rolls. The bloated federal workforce, yeah, there's a lot of them in Northern Virginia. It's a new day, and the bureaucracy has to be cut. The debt is out of control, and Democrats like the incumbent Jon Ossoff here aren't going to do anything about it. And Trump and the Republicans are left to do that duty. And when Vance was here in Georgia, he made very clear that this was the working man's tax cut. He talked about, and you don't read this in the AJC or the Associated Press very much, this is no tax on tips. This is no tax on Social Security. These are child care benefits. That's in that big, beautiful bill that the liberals want you to forget about.
Theron, let me ask you something, because I did an event this week with the Georgia Hospital Association, and their take is that Georgia is not going to be as impacted with the Medicaid cuts coming down the line because we did not expand Medicaid. And so it's not going to be as difficult here in Georgia as it is in New York or California. I was wondering if you heard similar things about that, especially when it comes to our rural hospitals.
Well, Lori, I did see you and your colleague Dave at the Georgia Hospital Association, and shout out to that organization, Kaylee in particular. They do a wonderful job. And I also spoke to them a few weeks ago. Brian Robinson and I spoke to them, and it was the day after the bill was actually passed. And it was a little bit of a different tone then. It was, oh my God, what are we going to do? It was reported, again, numbers don't lie, these are statistics that were reported, that Georgia was basically eligible to have maybe even 17 to 20 hospitals and nursing homes to close. Now, maybe something that has happened, a lot of some new details have come out, but the health experts that I talked to, the hospital instructors and administrators, they are bearing down, like they're hunkering down for these cuts. They're losing employees. I reported a couple weeks ago that there was a very prominent hospital in Atlanta who's already giving people buyout packages, who are giving them severance packages, who are reducing staff because they know that this is going to have a very negative impact. But I do commend the Georgia Hospital Association for speaking up about this, because their job is to try to keep everyone calm. But I know many of them are very, very afraid about the lack of funding to this. And the last thing I'll say is also about this bill. Phil makes some good points. I just remind our viewers, these tips that he's talking about, that won't come until later, back to Martha's point. But I'm talking about what's happening right now. There's cuts to veterans, there's cuts to green jobs, there are cuts to hospitals, and the economy right now is so uncertain, and it's, and groceries are still too high. So these are all things that Trump promised us that he was going to focus on, that he has yet to deliver on.
All right, I got both Republicans here shaking their heads no. Martha?
Yeah, I mean, look, numbers may not lie, but estimates are wrong a lot of times. Okay, and rural hospitals were a problem long before the big beautiful bill was passed, okay? And the real problem with a lot of rural hospitals is they can't afford to take ACA. They can't afford, I had an issue a year ago when my brother-in-law died where the ACA program plan that he had wasn't accepted by the hospital that he needed to go to. Okay, so the bigger problem's been going on here with healthcare. Don't say healthcare problems have come around since the big beautiful bill. We've had problems for a very long time as far as coverage. So I think there's an issue there too. But look, I think all this doom and gloom when the bill hasn't even taken effect, I think that we need to look at it. They were wrong about tariffs. They were wrong about the markets. They were wrong about a lot of things as far as their estimates are concerned. So let's see how it really settles out.
All right, we'll leave it there, folks. I want to move on. Georgia's U.S. Senate race took center stage at a major chamber event in Columbus. Senator Jon Ossoff and two of the Republicans trying to unseat him made their pitches to a room full of Georgia's top business and political leaders offering sharply different visions of government and the economy. Theron, we'll start with you. Any takeaways here?
Look, shout out to Chris Clark and the entire Georgia Chamber of Commerce staff. Lori and Martha and Phil, you guys know this. This is an annual congressional luncheon that happens across the state, and they usually do it outside of Atlanta, so that's another plus. What I heard from this luncheon, I was not there. I was unfortunately in D.C. on a link trip. But what I heard from people were two things. Number one, Jon Ossoff is not the only person in this state that knows that this country is in crisis right now. I agree with Martha. There's still some positive things that has come out of this administration. There's also some negative things. We have to wait and see. But what I heard from everyone that attended that luncheon, Lori, is that Senator Jon Ossoff was exceptional. He was strong, he was factual, he was poised, and he had the microphone. Now, the other people had to sit there who were running against him and hear him, and that's the power of incumbency. But the fact that it was in Columbus, in Middle Georgia, it was packed, I think he really, really spoke to a lot of those independent and disaffected Republicans that he's going to need to be victorious next year.
Phil?
Well, Jon Ossoff is still basing his message on anti-Trump rhetoric, and it's not going to work. He wants Trump impeached. Come on, let's talk about more policies. And when we talk about these so-called cuts, it's very misleading because a lot of this, you mentioned veterans benefits are being cut. That's a myth. We all know Doug Collins is a veteran himself who heads the Veterans Affairs. There's consolidation that is going on, and it's aimed to have more efficiency. And so I think it's very misleading when politicians like Ossoff say that. He's still under 50% favorability as an incumbent U.S. Senator, and that's not good for any U.S. Senator or any politician. I think that the chamber always does a good job. Yes, public policy issues were discussed, and I think more Democrats ought to come into Georgia, hear me out, because the contrast is so stark between what we're doing with energy independence and dominance and fighting inflation and helping the working man. The Ossoff and the Democrats don't have a message, and it's very apparent.
All right, well, let me let Theron respond to that.
I think we can have a robust debate about the green jobs. Phil, you've been very passionate about this. You write about it in your magazine, but the fact of the matter is that this bill definitely reduced the amount of jobs that Georgia was going to be able to produce. Second thing I'll say is this. I don't think that John Ossoff has called recently for the president to be impeached. Actually, I think John Ossoff understands that he can't just fight Trump. He's got to fight for something. And that's why you've seen him across the state. We just co-hosted an event with him talking about cuts to hospitals, but we also talked about extending subsidies for the Affordable Care Act that is set to expire. So I think he's doing a lot of things on the offense, not just attacking Trump.
Real quickly, Martha.
Well, just real quickly, to be fair, everybody in that room has probably already made their mind up at the chamber lunch. You know, there are people that make their mind up early. They still haven't gotten out to the people that are actually going to make their mind up later, okay? And so that's where this race is going to be won, and I think that we've got a lot of work to do.
All right, coming up, International Paper is closing its doors in coastal Georgia, eliminating more than 1,000 jobs. We'll discuss next.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
In a major blow to Southeast Georgia's economy, International Paper is shutting down 4 facilities in the region, including a nearly century-old mill in Savannah that helped shape the city's manufacturing landscape. The closures will eliminate more than 1,100 jobs and also impact the state's timber industry. I know, Phil, this is tough to see.
It is tough to see. I mean, we all know people in that area, and that company had generations of workers and people. I do have to, as a response, commend Governor Brian Kemp. He jumped on this very quickly and commendably. He's bringing together the Technical College System of Georgia and the Department of Labor and Pat Wilson with the Economic Development folks to try to find opportunities for a lot of these workers. Now, of course, the Hyundai plant is employing people, so that will help somewhat. So let's hope that this offsets this really surprising blow.
But I think it's an industry that is going away. I mean, people aren't buying newspapers anymore. The use of paper, even though I know we still print things out a lot, the average person doesn't use as much paper. And that's why it's really important what the governor did to try to help transition people. And it's sad for the people losing their jobs, but at the same time, this is an industry that is not going to be a later 21st century industry the way it was in the last century.
And Theron, those folks are in good hands down there. Also, Phil had mentioned some of the names, but also Burt Brantley, he heads up the Savannah Chamber of Commerce, and just a great guy. I know he'll be passionate about this issue and helping folks transition.
Look, before I give my sort of Democratic partisan response to this, I do want to agree with Phil. The governor did go out really quickly. I agree with Martha that this is an industry that has been going through a transition. And yes, Lori, Burt Brantley is a good man. I know that they're working together along with mayors in those areas, particularly Mayor Van Johnson. But I have to call balls and strikes. I'm going to be a Democratic umpire. This is a result of the tariffs. You got 1,100 people this week who woke up and basically realized that their jobs were gone. And we're talking about not just Savannah. You talked about those areas, Lori. We're talking about Riceboro. We're talking about, this is also a community just a few years ago that had Georgia Pacific have to close a plant. I worked for Congressman John Barrow, and I was up and down that Savannah area, that CSRA, that coastal area. International Paper has been transformational for that community. It has basically provided a job for so many working families for over a century. So the fact that we're losing this job, we have to actually call it what it is. This is the result of a bill that does not help working families, and the tariffs are a part of the reason why this plant had to close. So my, hearts and prayers go out to these many families, many of whom I've met over the years, but we all need to do everything we can to help them through this recovery phase. Phil?
Well, let me just respond very quickly. Theron, you're only half right, but you're forgetting about the foreign competition which International Paper is facing, and they said that, and it's been a tough thing. Why is it tough? Because sometimes we need tariffs as a tool because they're not reciprocal, and that's what President Trump is trying to do. He's trying to help companies like International Paper deal with it by tariffs and trying to lower costs and trying to fend off this competition that's hurting American industry.
All right, Theron, he gave you half credit, so we'll move on there. Two of Georgia's top Republicans are facing off not on the campaign trail, but in federal court. Attorney General Chris Carr and Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones are locked in a high-stakes legal battle over campaign fundraising rules as both eye a run for governor in 2026. Now, Carr argues that Jones is skirting the law by using a leadership committee to raise unlimited funds, something Carr himself is barred from doing. Jones, meanwhile, says he's playing by the rules and that Carr has options if he wants to compete. Martha, take this one.
Yeah, so, and I do work for Chris Carr, so I want to disclose that. But I think that the precedent is, on this case, is going to be in favor of Carr, only because if you look at the precedent, it's kind of leaning that way. There was something as we went to record today about an ethics complaint that's being filed against from the Jones campaign to the Carr campaign. So, you know, I don't know exactly how this is all going to play out, but I think that the precedent of this kind of leans in the side of Carr on this particular case.
Oh, I think your fellow Republican might disagree.
I don't know about precedent. Yeah, there was injunctions in the past, but this was never ruled illegal. In fact, the judge even mused that this may be unfair, but it's not illegal. So I think that this will be.
We don't know how it's going to come out.
Well, that's obvious, but it's going to be a ruling. But I think the fact that I think Josh Belafonte, who was a great attorney who's working with Burt Jones and defending him, says Carr can go ahead and use these committees himself. But it's legal. It's a law that was passed by the General Assembly.
All right, Theron, I'm not leaving out the Democrats because it was a crowded church gym in Warner Robins. It became a campaign hotspot as several Democratic candidates for Georgia governor took to the stage during a meet and greet hosted by the state NAACP. Your thoughts?
Well, I want to first, compliment the Bibb County and Houston County NAACP. Lori, you see those candidates right now, all of these folks who are running. Gerald Griggs, the state president, pictured there as well. Organized labor was a part of this. But what was really, really refreshing is that it was a packed house. It was very, very big room. A lot of folks were there to hear these candidates. And while everyone did not show up, there were some who sent videos. You had Republicans and Democrats who were there. I think you had at least one Republican. It's good energy for that organization to show that people are very, very focused on who the candidates are for next year. But I hear from all the candidates and their staffers who were there that they were very, very pleased with the outcome and the turnout. I think Middle Georgia, that Houston County, Columbus, Muskogee County, Bibb County area is going to be a really, really key area for Democrats to pick up some votes in the next year election.
All right, coming up, a new twist in the Fulton County jail saga we'll discuss next.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Fulton County Sheriff Pat Labat is criticizing the county commission's decision to spend $1.2 billion to build a new special purpose facility and renovate the Rice Street Jail, saying the plan ignores urgent problems inside the troubled lockup. He called the move a political maneuver that defies a federal consent decree and fails to address the jail's immediate safety concerns. We have talked about this issue over and over and for years and decades and however long. But Phil, what do you think about this plan? Obviously, the sheriff disagrees with it.
Yes, I read Sheriff Labat's statement, and I like him. He's done some good things. He's got a horrible situation there in the jail with locks that break almost every other day. The inmates aren't supervised. It's understaffed, et cetera, et cetera. However, I think the county commission, with their narrow vote approving this plan, did the right thing. This had to be done, and just for the viewers, it's broken down into two components. There's going to be a new facility under this for the mentally challenged prisoners, which is way overdue. We all talk about mental health, especially when it comes to crime and punishment. And also, they're going to take that Rice Street jail facility and gut it in stages and then build it. And I think that is the best way to do it. And the commissioners that I've talked to say that this is going to actually save money. We'll be able to keep the inmates in there partially as it's being built. And at the end, maybe 5-6 years down the road is what they're talking about. out, we will have some stability and cost savings. We won't have to send prisoners out to other counties like they're doing now to be held. So I think in the crystal ball that I'm looking at, I think there could be a bipartisan approval to go ahead with this. And I'm sorry about the sheriff, but he's going to have to take his lumps.
Theron, do you agree with the sheriff, or do you think this is a good compromise?
I agree with the sheriff that we do need a new jail. I think my fellow panelists on the show, I know I can probably speak for Phil, Martha, I know you'll weigh in here in a second. I don't want to speak for you, but I think we all agree that if the funding is there and it doesn't put a tremendous burden on taxpayers and it's going to help save lives and not be in these deplorable conditions, I think we all are in favor with the sheriff when he needs a new jail. I think the sheriff did a good thing of having a good statement, and I'm going to paraphrase here, Laura. He said, what just happened was a vote that basically said, hey, we have a burning building, but we're going to vote to spend billions of dollars to build a new fire station right next to it, but it doesn't open up until 5 years from now. I think the point that the sheriff is trying to make is that if you keep continuing to just patch up the jail, and a lot of this funding is on down the road, it's not immediate funding, to Phil's point, he did a good job of explaining it. However, I do think these commissioners are under the gun. They're under a lot of pressure, so they voted on what they thought was a compromise. And so let's not sugarcoat it. The sheriff's office and the commissioners have not always been on the same page on some issues, but particularly on this jail, you have a sheriff who has pleaded with them for funding to get him an opportunity to build a new jail, but they don't believe that we need a new jail right now. They believe that there's a renovation process that can sustain it. So ultimately, I think that the sheriff is going to have to deal with what happened, but I do support him when he says we do need to build a new jail and build it fast.
Interesting take. Theron said if the funding is there for a new jail. Is the funding there?
Yeah, and of course, my husband runs a correctional healthcare business, and we handle the Hall County Jail. So I'm kind of looking at this from a distance, but also with a little bit of experience in this. And it's felt to me like it was splitting the baby. Okay, it was a compromise. I think everybody accepts that we need a new jail, I think, in Fulton County, and I kind of agree with the sheriff on this. However, I understand what the commission did, because they may not have $2 billion to do it. Maybe $1.2 billion is all what they've got. So from that standpoint, I think we need to see it go down the road, and that's kind of the theme today. We've got things we're talking about that we don't know exactly how they're going to play out. But in this case, I think they tried to come up with a compromise. We'll see if it's enough.
All right, well, another political showdown in Fulton County. Commissioners have once again refused to appoint 2 Republican nominees to the county's election board, despite a judge's order telling them that they must. Now, the stalemate has sparked outrage from GOP leaders and could soon lead to contempt charges. I seem that this feud never ends. Phil.
Well, this should spur outrage among everybody in Georgia. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. Our Democrats always say no one's above the law. Well, why could these Democrats just defy a judge's court order? And they're subject, and I hope they are, they're subject to fines and even jail time. In fact, Mo Ivory, one of the Democrat commissioners, is actually an attorney who is defying this. If the state bar has any spine whatsoever when it comes to discipline, they ought to fine her or perhaps disbar her. I think that every political party, and just for our viewers, they have to have appointees by both parties on this elections board. The Republicans have every right to choose whoever they want, so do the Democrats.
Theron, weigh in quickly.
Yeah, look, Commissioner Mo Ivory, because Phil called her name, feels very strongly about this. Yes, she's very qualified to be in this seat. She is a lawyer. But if you look at her comments, Lori, she's saying, look, we believe that we're taking the right stance. And she, quote, said, hey, if it means risk going to jail and getting in trouble, her and the fellow other Commissioner Dana Barrett also really feels that this was the right thing to do. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil and Martha and Lori, I don't think we actually had all the commissioners present, right, on this vote. Is that what I remember? Some
of the Democrats did not show up, which forced the fact that the Republicans couldn't be appointed.
Right, and again, yeah, that's a good way of saying it. I tried to be a little bit more politically correct. But yes, you didn't have a full representation of the commission there, so we don't know where those other commissioners are. But ultimately, it didn't happen. I think this is going to continue.
I'll do 3 words. They should show up and they should vote.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Theron, we'll start with you. Thank you for joining us virtually.
Hey, and thank you all so much to the executive producers, Lori, for you doing a great job of having me connect. I really appreciate you guys doing that. I know a lot goes into it. My first winner is going to be Sheriff Williams and Harriet Collins. Lori, I had the opportunity to speak last week at the Law Enforcement Community Engagement Conference in Athens. It was good to be back at the Classic Center where I graduated from high school in 1996. But all these women and men coming together to figure out better ways that they can work to partner with the community and make sure they keep us safe. I also want to give a huge shout out to Anna Roach. As you mentioned, I'm in the DMV area. The Atlanta Regional Commission takes a group of leaders from all over the region. We go to different areas. Mayor Andre Dickens is the chair of this board. We've learned a lot of great things here. And then lastly, it's this. The winners are the people who have served at the IP plant down in the Savannah area. Those 1,100 people who lost their jobs. You guys are winners. Sorry this has happened to you, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure you can recover from this bad choice.
All right, Martha.
Houston Gaines is a winner. He's doing a fantastic job in his campaign. He's showing up everywhere, and I think he's doing a great job. Don't forget the PSC race. Everybody's thinking ahead to next fall. You've got municipal races and PSC races coming up, so don't forget that. And the Northeast Georgia Literary Society is going to have the largest group of authors join on Tuesday from 10 to 2. If you're an author or a budding author, you should get out there. Thank you.
Phil?
Well, the winner is football season starts in Athens at my alma mater, University of Georgia, next Saturday. And I don't know what a winner or loser is going to be with the Cobb Commission, but there's a splosh vote supposedly scheduled for the War Memorial for Veterans. And I don't know how that's going to go. I hope that maybe a compromise can be sought to get that done.
All right. Thank you both for hanging in there today. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you again next week.